Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the SITREP for the day of 568 to 569 for the 14th to 15th of September. I need to rush out, so I'm going to try to do it as fast as I can. So in the Black Sea, the Ukrainians continue their drone strikes against the Black Sea Fleet. We have two separate reports on the 15th and on the 16th. The hovercraft Samun has been attacked, and then after that, the next day we have the Escort, which is a small missile boat, was also tried to be attacked by the suicide surface drones. Both are reportedly destroyed by the ship's standard armaments like machine guns and guns. So far no drama on this, unlike the previous days where one of the ship got hit. Over in the southern front, the Ukrainians continue their amphibious operations, this time around over the opposite of Sadove, which is over here, just off Stepney. Probably some kind of reinforcement to whatever they already have there. Same thing over at Kozarsky. So the opposite Kozarsky, the Kozarsky Island continued to be landed with Ukrainian forces on the 14th and the 15th. The Russians see them, they continue to try to shell these units, but so far I think it's in vain, because it's very, very small squads of troops. We move on to the Zaporizhzhia front. At the Zaporizhzhia front, at the Orikhiv sector, so this is Orikhiv. At the Orikhiv sector, the Ukrainian forces continue their offensive actions towards NOVOPROKOPIVKA as well as towards Verbove. There's geolocation of Ukrainian forces at this position. The Ukrainian Bradley vehicles got destroyed, and but this also shows that the Russians are not there. The Ukrainians are fighting downwards, southward towards NOVOPROKOPIVKA. Effectively, you can also call it that, as the fighting is now at the outskirts of the northern part of NOVOPROKOPIVKA. Fighting is reported by Deep State UA Marashenikov. And as you can see, Marashenikov, they say that it's in the area of NOVOPROKOPIVKA on the northwestern outskirts. And also the Russian Defense Ministry also talk about fighting near Robotyne. So the Russian Defense Ministry still continue to say it's near around Robotyne rather than NOVOPROKOPIVKA, which also might suggest that the Ukrainians are still largely stuck nearer to Robotyne than over here, closer to NOVOPROKOPIVKA. This is how I interpret it. And there is fighting continue towards NOVOPROKOPIVKA, and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry claims partial success in the area of NOVOPROKOPIVKA. And this does not mean much, because in a way that the geolocation of Russian forces over at this position shows that the Ukrainians are still stuck at this tree line. They still have not managed to penetrate into NOVOPROKOPIVKA itself. So this geolocation is by the pro-Ukrainian source, Dnipro-Osin. We move on to the other side at the Verbove region. There is geolocation of Ukrainian forces entrenched at this position, at this trench line, getting shelled by Russian artillery. So this also shows that the Ukrainians have multiple lines of defenses. They continue to have send troops into entrenchment in the rear, fearing maybe Russian attacks, that may break through one or two lines and cause a massive collapse of the front. So the Ukrainians do have entrenchments and troops manning trenches even in the rear. So the Ukrainians' attack towards Verbove continues on the 14th to the 15th. Deep State UA and Marashenikov talk about it on the 14th, and on the 15th we have the Ukrainian Defense Ministry and Ryba talking about it. We move on from Verbove to the next front line, which is over in the Velyka Novosilka sector. The Ukrainian forces continue their attack on Prione. So they're really very angry with Russians humiliating them, capturing so much ground in the north of Prione. They continue their counterattack, with Russian Defense Ministry acknowledging the fighting at Prione. Ryba also talked about the Ukrainians continue to be attacking Russians' position across the entire line all the way to Staromayoske. Then the next day on the 15th, Ryba continued to report about the fighting at Prione. So far, it's just infantry attacks. They haven't been successful, with the Russians continue to hold the line successfully at Prione. So we move on to this area here around Staromayoske. We have Ukrainian forces being geolocated in the rear, which is hit by a Krasnopol. So the front line is definitely further away from there. You don't use such a long range stuff to hit something near to the front line. And also there is fighting reported near Staromayorsky. Ryba reported the Ukrainians attacked the whole line, so I just have to indicate this over here. Although it does sound a bit exaggerating, I don't think it's this far out. And interestingly, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported Russians attacking Uruzhaine. So this attack is reported on the 15th of September. So let's see if this will end up to be anything. It's not mentioned by any other sources. So moving on, there is geolocation of the front line by military summary over on the eastern part of Uruzhaine. Ukrainian forces attacked this tree line around here. This is geolocated with a video. So the Russian forces are over here. So there might be some fighting. Not sure when is it in the eastern part of Uruzhaine. And let's see how this goes. Apparently the attack is quite a big force, 4 to 5 MREPs with a lot of infantry, but did not work out. We move on to the Donetsk front. The Ukrainian forces continue their attack on Novodonetsk and Novomayorsky. The attacks still have not been successful. The front line have not really changed. The Russian Defense Ministry reported this on the 14th about the attack at Novodonetsk. It's not mentioned by other OSINs though. And then so this could actually be reporting about the situation on the 13th, because the Russians do report late. And so which means that there might be no more attacks on Novodonetsk. They have given up on the Russian Marines, and the focus is still pretty much on Novomayorsky, with the fighting being reported by the Vostok group of forces, as well as the Russian Defense Ministry's main report about the fighting on the at Novomayorsky. Geolocation of Ukrainian forces, as you can see, is all over these different places, which shows that the Ukrainian forces are trying very, very hard to try to penetrate back into the town. There might be a possibility that the Russians have retaken the town, given the difficulty of Ukrainian forces to reinforce this foothold. So this is my guess. I got a feeling that the Russians have retaken the town, given this much troops is getting shelled and attacked. So we have a geolocation by Z Archive, military summary. Yeah, mostly it's military summary, and yeah. So that's all from Novomayorsky. We move on to the other side of the Donetsk front. There is geolocation of Ukrainian forces on the eastern part of Novomikhailivka by military summary. So that just shows that the Ukrainians still have full control over Novomikhailivka. Over at Marinka itself, there's a geolocation of a flamethrower system, the TOS-1A, shelling Ukrainian forces at the edge, very end of the Marinka. And this strike over here does shows that the Ukrainian forces is pretty much at their ends over at Marinka, with the fighting continue to be reported over in this region here from the 14th to the 15th, and reported by Ukrainian Defense Ministry, Deep State UA, and Surya Maps. So moving on over from Marinka, we go to Avdiivka front. At the Avdiivka front, the main fighting is pretty much in this area here. Mostly in the OPTYNE region. Myroshnikov and Ryba continue to report about the fighting, the Ukrainian offensive at OPTYNE. But given the information from Ryba, Ryba mentioned that the fighting at OPTYNE has become more positional, which means the Ukrainian offensive have been grind to a halt by the Russian defenders tentatively. And the Ukrainian Defense Ministry simply mentioned about fighting in Avdiivka and the Lashtokyne region. Lashtokyne is very weird because Lashtokyne is here, so they say that the Russians are fighting in the area of Lashtokyne. So this is very, very vague, so take it with a pinch of salt. And nothing over in the northern part. We move on into the Bakhmut front. At the Bakhmut front, we have fighting reported at Mayos. So the Russian Defense Ministry reported about the fighting at Mayos on their 15th of September report, and they mentioned they defended against Ukrainian attack at Mayos as well as at KLISHCHIIVKA. The situation at KLISHCHIIVKA is a bit interesting. Russian Defense Ministry, Ukrainian Defense Ministry and Deep State UA mentioned about the fighting, and there is partial success according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. And the Russian Defense Ministry didn't acknowledge much, simply say that about the attack. And Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 15th continued to report about partial success. And Ryba still talked about fighting and managed to repel Ukrainian attacks, and Surya Maps and Myroshnikov actually both say that the Ukrainian forces has pretty much captured almost all of KLISHCHIIVKA, leaving the very end part. So the very end part here, there is still some Russian forces at the very edge. Mostly they are now at the railway line, with the Ukrainian forces are captured most of it with the offensive ongoing. This entirely contradicted Ryba's report about Ukrainian forces have redrawn out of KLISHCHIIVKA after the Russian massive offensive on KLISHCHIIVKA, where the Ukrainians shelled the entire village. This continues to be quite disputed. Ryba have not acknowledged that the Ukrainians are now here, so we shall continue to monitor to see what is the exact situation over in this position. There is fighting reported south of Ozeryanivka, according to Myroshnikov, the pro-Ukrainian source. We don't have much. And over at Kudyomivka, similarly, there's fighting also by Myroshnikov. Also not reported by anyone else about the fighting over here. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported that they have captured ANDRIIVKA. And this is echoed by Deep State UA, acknowledging the Ukrainian Defense Ministry report. Although, despite before that, the rumors of the capture of the settlement has been rejected by all the all the credible sources, saying that it is premature. However, because of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry's declaration, all the Ukrainian sources have agreed that ANDRIIVKA is captured because they have to follow the line of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. However, this is disputed by Ryba. Ryba, the pro-Russian source, reported that despite the statement of the Ukrainian side, ANDRIIVKA continues to be in the gray zone because it's totally flattened. I have shown this in the quick update. You can go and check it out. So Ukrainian Defense Ministry and Deep State UA only mentioned about the fighting at ANDRIIVKA on the 14th. By the 15th, only Ryba was talking about it. So Ryba disputed the claim. We shall continue to see how this goes. And there's no one basically inside that mud flat. No, it's just one flat ground over there right now. And over on the northern flank of the Bakhmut front, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry claimed that the Russians attacked around the Yakhine region and at Bodanivka. So this is a long ongoing thing that the Ukrainian Defense Ministry has always been talking about. Not sure what is there to attack because don't seem to be true. And over in the Sivas front, at the Sivas front, we have geolocation of Ukrainian forces within Rozdolivka. And then there was a fighting reported near Vasily, according to Surya Maps, with the Russian forces taking some grounds just on the eastern part of Vasily. And over at so that's all from the Sivas front. We have no fighting reported at the Crimea front. This is also acknowledged by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, saying that there is no offensive operations by the Russian side in the Liman direction. Over at the Svetove front, we have fighting reported at Novoyehorovka. Deep State UA say that it's a feeble attack by the Russians, and then there is nothing over at the Kupiansk front. So that's all for the SITREP for the day of 568 to 569 for the 14th to 15th of September. So just some quick conclusions. The Ukrainian forces continue their surface drone attacks in the Black Sea. This is likely going to eventually cripple the entire Black Sea fleet into hiding in some corner. At this rate, it will be very difficult for the Black Sea fleet to operate freely. And the landings continues along the Dnipro River. I'm not sure what is the main purpose of this. Probably just to stretch the Russian forces to force them to defend way longer front lines than they need to. And Ukrainians continue to attack over at the OPTYNE, Verbove, Novoprokopivka region. Given the geolocations and the fighting, I don't think the Ukrainians have made much headway tentatively. And over at the Velyka Novosilka sector, attacks at Prione probably will likely to continue, with the Ukrainians trying to retake the northern part that they lost to the surprise attack by the Russians. And I'm not going to expect much from the Uruzhaine, Staromayorsky region. Ukrainian forces given up on Donetsk. They're probably going to continue to try to take the initiative at Novomayorsky. But given the geolocation and the video footage coming out from this area, it looks really terrible for the Ukrainians. They are finding it very hard to reinforce into Novomayorsky, and they are most likely going to lose this foothold, given that the situation, the trend of the Russians able to shell them and drone strike them to oblivion. Over at Marinka, given this usage of flamethrower system over at the Ukrainian forces on the very edge now of Marinka, the Russian forces is probably very close to capturing Marinka, and this is the same situation over at KLISHCHIIVKA, but on the opposite end, with the Ukrainian forces are now at the cusp of capturing KLISHCHIIVKA, just like what they see at ANDRIIVKA. But ANDRIIVKA is most likely to be a gray zone, given how flat the ground is, unless, like I mentioned before, unless the Ukrainian forces capture these 3 lines, they are unlikely to capture ANDRIIVKA effectively or securely. The fighting at OPTYNE at the Avdiivka front is probably coming into the end, because the Ryba say that it's becoming more positional, so we are likely to see the end of this Ukrainian offensive over there. Otherwise, the rest of the front line have turned really quiet, and this is the conclusion. Thank you for watching. Press the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next update.